People who were in a coma, what change surprised you when you woke up? I was in a coma for 4 days. When I woke up everyone was talking about the baby boy I had. I had lost my long-term memory and didn't even remember being pregnant. My son was at the children's hospital in the NICU. I delivered him via C-section at 29 weeks. All this was due to me having Crohn's disease. I found out after I woke up my colon had ruptured during my pregnancy. My husband said I was talking like a child when I first woke up. When I woke I felt super tired, but then the next few days, kinda restless. I remembered one conversation my mom had with a nurse while I was under. After a couple of days I got my long-term memory back and remembered everything up until my second surgery, then nothing until I woke up. My son was my third surgery. Back in the 90s, my great-grandfather had a stroke. He was in a coma for 3 weeks, and when he woke up, he could not speak English. All he could speak was the Choctaw language. He had learned it when he was a kid because his family lived right near a Choctaw reserve, and he played with a lot of those kids. He spoke it fluently at that time, but forgot it over his life to where he couldn't remember any of it by this time. This went on for around 10 days, and then he woke up from a night's sleep and could suddenly speak only English again, not remembering a word of Choctaw. He was also able to repeat verbatim every conversation that had been held in the room that he was in. I was in a coma for 9 days. When I woke up I was still on a ventilator. When they took me off the ventilator, my body didn't remember to breathe on its own. I literally had to relearn how to breathe. Took me a few days. I had no natural sense for how long or deeply to inhale, how long to hold it, how long to exhale. I had to put all my mental focus towards breathing. It was really weird. Edit. For all the people wondering how I slept, I didn't for the first couple days. If I dozed off, my blood O2 monitor would start beeping and wake me up. Then a nurse would yell at me from across the ICU to remember to breathe. I couldn't talk because I'd had the tubes down my nose and throat, but I remember one time I woke up really exhausted to that damn beeping. So I started focusing on breathing again, but I was really angry about it. My nurse came running over yelling at me to breathe. I glared at her and screamed in my non-existent voice, I am. She must have read my lips and felt the rage because she just put her hands up and said, alright, good job, then walked away. Anyway, shared that because I've never had the opportunity to before. My ability to breathe normally was back within a month or so, and my health is good nowadays, so I wouldn't say it had any permanent effects. My mom was in a induced coma for 3 months. When she woke up she thought the hospital was trying to kill her. She tried to get out of bed and she fell on the floor because she could not walk. She was mostly freaked about how her feet had lost their form. They were humped over from not being used. Every muscle she had to learn again. She couldn't talk well or write at all. She has different handwriting after relearning. She said she hated how perfect her hands looked. Her nails and cuticles were perfect and clean from not being used. I remember trying to brush her hair after she woke up. Almost all of it fell out. She almost died pretty much every day she was in her coma. She had sepsis from a diverticulitis surgery gone wrong. A lot of her hair has grown back and she can walk, but has brain damage that makes her seem very tipsy. She is always dizzy, but it's been 5 years now and her recovery has been miraculous. A good friend of our family went into a coma for half a year. Finally when he woke up, he was stunned why his wife looked so old. He actually lost the last 15 years of his memory. He knew he had 2 children, but they were babies, and he didn't even know about his 3rd child. And the memory never came back. He skipped from no mobile phones to smartphones, to laptops. Everything was new to him. Being stuck in early 90s, but actually being in the 2000s, there was a lot of change to handle. But learning you missed all your children growing up was the hardest for him. This is the saddest story I've seen in this thread. Oh lord, this is awful. He must feel like he's being punished, and it must be for something terrible. My wife was in a coma 2 weeks medically induced. When she woke she had very wrong memories. They were all based on conversations people had while in the room with her. For example, she thought they flew her to Washington DC for treatment. While she was in a coma, my father-in-law mentioned how he just flew back into town from DC on a work trip. Somehow, she overheard this while out, and her brain interpreted it to mean she flew to DC. Even after we explained to her the reality of where she was, it took days for her to come to terms with reality. Edit. She was in a coma about 10 years ago. She is not currently in a coma. My brother-in-law had a brain tumor, so he was out for a while. When he was first brought to the hospital, the nurses happened to be of Asian descent, so when he was awake he kept apologizing to people for making them have to come to Japan to see him. My stepdad was in a coma/ICU for about 3 weeks. Woke up and he couldn't find his teeth. We looked for a week, completely forgot where we put them. Then he dropped dead at the bathroom sink in the hospital. Out of nowhere. They revived him. Couldn't figure out why he could barely breathe. Then the hospital sat us down and showed us the x-rays with his dentures in his body. They forgot to take them out when they put the tubes in his mouth, blocking his air pipes or whatever. So yeah, we found them though. My wife was in a medically induced coma for 4 days. She had a reaction to contrast dye and her heart stopped for 20 minutes. For nearly 3 months, she was confabulating about her long dead parents. She would speak about them like they were in the next room. Or she would say her daughter or brother called, but they hadn't. Over and over she thought her mom was alive, then her dad. Drove me crazy having to gently correct her many times per day. She would come up with amazing tales about what people, relatives, friends, neighbors were doing, what they said, truly creative fiction. 3 months later, she began to come back. The confabulation stopped. Now things are reversed. She can remember recent events, but her long-term memories are gone. I don't know what that's like, but it must be awful. She cries sometimes for her lost memories, but overall she is doing very well. My dad had a reaction to contrast dye after a head injury, had seizures, and it was like his brain rebooted. He could only say how's the girl my sister had just born. He couldn't hold things or grab them. Spent several months in therapy. At the end his mood changed. He became very irascible, had little patience, and became very sleepy. He's fine now, except for some neck pains. About 20 years ago, my cousin had a severe head injury from a fall. He was about 20 at the time. I was in a coma for almost 4 weeks. When he woke up, he fairly quickly discovered that his memory was eidetic. He could repeat entire conversations back word for word, and even tell you the date and time you said something. Also, he could memorize images with just a few seconds glance. His memory is still eidetic today. It's annoying as duck. Whenever he reminds me of something I said in the past, usually something I can't even remember, I suggest that we hit him in the head again. Looking at what happened last time he was hit in the head, he'd probably just develop another borderline superpower. Better not risk getting corrected or called out even more accurately. I was in a coma for close to 6 weeks. When I woke I had to learn everything again. I had most of my speech abilities, but my motor control was horrid. I had to figure out how to wipe my butt as well as walk up and down stairs again. That took about 3 weeks. I had lost a ton of weight too. I was 6 feet 3 inches and weighed about 145. 6 weeks. Holy god. Massive head trauma followed by being shot up with MRI dye that I was deeply allergic to. I died on the table for minutes. My cousin was in a coma cause of a motorcycling accident. When he woke up, it's like he was transported back in his younger days. Acts and talks like a kid. He's better now, after about 7 years, though there's still something off with the way he speaks. He stutters and talks fast like how children do when they're excited. He has gotten talkative too. So what has surprised him when he woke up is the fact that he has a daughter of his own. That sounds like some lasting effects of brain trauma. I had a coworker who was in a coma for a few months, and when he came back to work he was an entirely different person. He was always a chill, nice dude, but after the coma I don't think I ever heard him badmouth anyone ever again. He also had significant brain trauma and nerve damage that resembled a muscular disorder when he walked around. One leg was always very stiff. Medically induced for approximately a week due to sepsis. When I was in, I thought I was a bird with my wings outstretched that was slowly freezing to the ground. When I woke up, I thought I was in Taos, but it looked like Ratton. I was in Albuquerque, in a hospital that I had worked in 4 years. I thought I was 10 years younger. I thought I had gotten into a wreck and my fiancé at the time was an abusive ex-boyfriend. I thought my fiancé had found me naked on the side of I-25 and had taken to a veterinary hospital. It took another month and a half for me to understand what happened. I was in and out of surgery and died a couple times in that time. Once, they were changing out my wound vac, and I looked down and saw inside of me. Then things started making a little more sense. I still can't eat cheeseburgers. Wait, what did cheeseburgers have to do with it? When I looked down and saw myself open, it resembled a cheeseburger that someone had cut in half and left in a fridge uncovered for 2 weeks.